On Friday, Ross Dellinger reported 7 years, approximately $90 million that LSU is offering Lane Kiffin. Now, one of the things that I've been pretty clear about is neither LSU or Ole Miss or Florida are going to lose Lane Kiffin because of money. This isn't going to be a thing where one school bids or offers 11 and stops, and then another goes to 13 a year, and that's not. They're all comparable. The money's going to make sense. There's a couple of things that I think matter here. The structure is important. I've explained this before. And by the way, I do have a full episode. I recorded an episode of Locked on LSU over the weekend. And great, if you're not subscribed, great time to subscribe. Favorite podcast app or on YouTube, just search Locked on LSU. I have a 30-minute episode going into great detail about this if this interests you, about the contract. But as I understand it, there's a couple things that are notable. One is that there are escalators with incentives in Lane Kiffin's, the contract offer LSU made. And I've explained it before, but a lot of this is like a pro structure where you have likely to be earned and not likely to be earned bonuses. So, for example, like Joe Burrow being on the Bengals roster might trigger a roster bonus that would be likely to be earned. Joe Burrow winning the NFL MVP would be a not likely to be earned bonus, where if it triggers a boom, escalator. And again, I don't know what Joe Burrow's contract looks like. I'm just saying, for example. So maybe something like you get to a bowl game, boom, bonus, or 9 wins. If you win the national championship or win the SEC championship, bigger escalator, so to speak. So that's one thing. Also, as I understand it, the buyout structure is appropriately on a sliding scale according to results. So if Lane Kiffin keeps winning, the buyout stays high. If you start losing with certain thresholds, the buyout would drop significantly. So that's one of the things that you could also say, okay, you don't mind paying a coach a lot of money if they're winning. What you want to avoid is paying a coach a lot of money for losing. And so the structure of this contract matters a lot, which is why I think it's so important how they built this committee to find the coach, right? Because you have Scott Ballard and John Carmouche and E.J. Kuiper and Ben Bordelon and these are people that run massive businesses that do $1 million deals every single day, so they know how to structure these types of things that make it, both fair and enticing for both sides. So I think it's very smart how they've done that. Now, the other thing that I think is probably the most important part of this whole conversation is the NIL. Now, remember, NIL as pay for play is no longer allowed. You can't just fund a collective and write checks to players. One of the things that LSU has done exceptionally well, which is why I think a major reason why I think LSU has a lead in this race for Lane Kiffin. Remember back in March, we had Clay Harris on AFR, who's the chief revenue officer at LSU, and he explained the LSU Max program that LSU got into at Playfly Sports. If you don't remember this, it's fine. Again, I have a full detailed episode of Locked on LSU live right now if you want to go check it out, where I played some of the sound bites from the interview with Clay. But just understand, LSU this interview was in March. Clay told us in March, for 12 to 18 months prior, LSU was working on this. For the rev share era, how do they generate true NIL deals for their student athletes? A big part of that is the deal they did with Playfly Sports for LSU Max, where Playfly, who has these business relationships with hundreds of businesses all over the country, potentially even all over the world, that they are already selling for LSU sports properties, could do the same for their student athletes. Effectively, they've worked hard so that they can guarantee a threshold of true NIL on top of rev share, which is dramatically different than saying to Lane Kiffin, we're going to give you $40 million for your roster. Okay, that's great. You have someone that wants to write a $200,000 check so I can go sign a lineman. How do you get that through the clearinghouse? Well, LSU has done a really good job of being proactive to be able to get those deals through the clearinghouse, because they were very proactive on the front end with how they've gone through these brand deals with Playfly, NIL, LSU Max, and being proactive about how they structure those deals, how they get them approved, what's appropriate, how they have deliverables, all that sort of stuff. And it has given LSU a big lead in that space. Everybody can spend the rev share dollars, right? Everybody has $20.5 million, of which 75% is going to go to football for everybody. The differentiator is, how do you get the money on top of the rev share? And LSU has been at the forefront of that. And for an athletic department that was very much behind for the first 2-3 years of NIL, and they were. And in that interview with Clay Harris, he acknowledged it, something I said for a couple of years that LSU fans, a lot of administrators, didn't like me saying publicly, but it was true. They were not fundraising for the collective. They were not being proactive and aggressive in the NIL era as pay for play. And they learned their lesson and got very proactive for this era, the rev share era. And that has given LSU a big step forward for how they're going to be able to proceed in the coming years. And that's something where I think for Lane Kiffin, his fear about staying at Ole Miss is everything is going to revert to the way it was, where you have the powers that be, the blue bloods that are going to take over the sport again. When Texas Tech can't just stroke checks and buy a roster, SMU, Ole Miss, it's going to go back to the way it was, is their fear. And so you look at who has a great brand. Well, Texas Tech doesn't have a great brand. LSU does. Libby Dunn, Paul Skeens, Joe Burrow. I mean, if you look at Angel Reese, Flaugier, Mondo Duplantis. I mean, like the most recognizable track athlete in the world, Sha'Carri Richardson. I mean, think of like LSU's. Netflix did a full doc. Was it a Netflix or was it Amazon that did the full documentary about LSU and their brand? Like, yes, LSU's a very strong brand. So national companies will want to do brand deals with LSU athletes because the brand is so strong. I'm not an LSU guy, but this, for God's sake, they did a documentary about it. So, yes, LSU has been very much on the forefront. Jaden Daniels of all of this. And it's why they have a major advantage right now over Florida and over Ole Miss for Lane Kiffin. Yeah. See if they can get across the finish line by this weekend.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.